One of the best presidents in the history of Botswana was Seretse Khama. Seretse overcame political opposition to his interracial marriage to become the country's first post-colonial leader, serving from 1966 until his death in 1980. He led Botswana to independence and oversaw the swift economic growth of Botswana during his time in office. Seretse was able to achieve this through investments in the development of infrastructures, healthcare, and educational systems. In fact, we considered it highly unlikely that Botswana would have been spared from extreme poverty or the long-standing desire of the apartheid, had it not been for the caution, direction, and political argument of Seretse. Presently, Seretse Khama is regarded as one of the greatest achievements in African politics of the 20th century and a superb statesman on a global scale. So in today's video, we'll discuss the life and legacy of Botswana's first president, Seretse Khama. Don't go anywhere, as we're about to get started. Seretse's birth. Sir Seretse Khama was born on July 1, 1921 in Seretse village. Seretse is the Bamangwato people's capital and central district. He was the son of Queen Tebogo and Seretse Khama II, the paramount chief of the Bamangwato people. He was the grandson of Khama III, the greatest Bamangwato ruler who brought many Botswana together while on the throne before his death in 1923, with Seretse II taking over. The word Seretse means mud in Setswana, but when used as a name, it was understood to refer to the clay that binds. It was not in vain that Seretse was given the name. The name was given to him because he was born during a period of turmoil in the royal family, which would become a recurring theme throughout his life. Seretse was given that name specifically to honor the recent reconciliation between his father and his grandfather, Khama III. This reconciliation ensured Seretse's succession to the throne after his father died when he was only 4 years old. As he did when he finally won the presidency, Seretse was a man born to unite people both within and outside Botswana. Seretse's uncle, Seretse Khama, who oversaw the Bamangwato on his behalf, took care of him after his parents passed away in 1925 and 1930, respectively. Seretse's uncle assumed the roles of regent and guardian because he was too young to rule, with the goal of Seretse taking over when he was old enough. Seretse's health was neglected during this period, and this will greatly affect him in the later years. Seretse's early life and education. As a result of attending boarding schools and eventually traveling abroad, Seretse Khama spent the majority of his early years away from home. He attended Lovedale and Tygerkloof, two of South Africa's most prestigious schools, for both his primary and secondary education. Seretse developed considerable physical skills and became a good all-rounder in sports. Later in 1944, he graduated from Fort Hare College in the same nation with a general Bachelor of Arts degree. The Fort Hare College was a renowned school. Some African leaders like Nelson Mandela of South Africa, Yusuf Lule of Uganda, Robert Mugabe of Zimbabwe, and Insu Makale of Lesotho attended this college. Seretse then continued on to Balliol College in Oxford, England, after completing his legal studies at the University of Witwatersrand in South Africa. In 1946, he finally began studying to become a barrister at London's Inner Temple. His marriage and exile. In 1947, Seretse Khama met Ruth Williams, the daughter of George and Dorothy Williams, at a dance at Nutford House organized by the London Missionary Society. Her sister introduced her to Prince Seretse Khama. Ruth was born on December 9, 1923, in Blackheath, southeast London, and was pursuing a financial career at the time. She later became a clerk at Lloyd's, the renowned global insurance broker. After a year of courtship, Seretse and Ruth married in 1948, hidden from his family and the general public. Naturally, his family was shocked to learn of this. However, the Bamangwato people welcomed the news with open arms. Seretse Khama, his uncle, was the one who led the outpouring of rage. It got worse when South Africa's apartheid minority learned of the news. Botswana believed Seretse Khama had broken the law regarding race and social norms. South Africa was unhappy to have an interracial couple so close to its government due to the apartheid system's ban on interracial unions. After learning of the union, Tshisekedi demanded that Seretse return home and ordered the marriage to be dissolved. Seretse returned home with Ruth, who was welcomed as Mohumagadi, the queen, by the Morafe tribe. When they arrived in Botswana, the couple was living in Lobatse, a town just 2 kilometers from the pioneer border crossing into South Africa. Because the Morafe people liked and accepted Ruth, they resisted Tshisekedi's attempts to forbid Seretse. As a result, Tshisekedi acknowledged Seretse's victory and fled into self-imposed exile. In 1949, the elders reaffirmed Seretse's role as Kozi, which means chief. Seretse and Ruth's first child, Jacqueline Tebogo Khama, was born on May 15, 1950 in Lobatse. Seretse later returned to London to finish his studies, but more problems arose while he was there. The neighboring countries of Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, and South Africa, both ruled by white minorities, protested the most, putting pressure on the United Kingdom's Labour Party-led government to remove Khama from the chieftainship. Global response. The British government demanded evidence that Seretse was the preferred candidate back home while they were in London. A succession was alleged in the best interest of the British Parliament, so they ordered an investigation to determine whether he was qualified to rule. Despite the fact that the investigation found Seretse to be eminently fit to rule, this report was kept secret for 30 years. South Africa continued to put pressure on the British government to have Khama removed from his chieftainship because Botswana was a protectorate under their rule. The large gold and uranium deposits in South Africa, which would help reduce Britain's debt from the Second World War, had been known to be of interest to the UK. The greatest concern was that South Africa might sanction Bechuanaland, now known as Botswana, or even launch military operations there, sparking an unwelcome conflict that could involve Britain once again. Thus, in 1951, Britain exiled Khama from Bechuanaland and complied with South Africa's request to remove him from his position as chieftain. It should be noted that Seretse Khama has been in the news since their union began in 1948 for being a black man who married a white English woman at a time when interracial marriages were frowned upon socially and politically, particularly in the context of South Africa's apartheid system. When the couple was prohibited from traveling to Bechuanaland and Khama was overthrown, the world's admiration for the couple was replaced by rage at what it saw as persecution of the innocent Seretse and Ruth by the British government and the South African apartheid regime. The outrage from the international media compelled Britain to change its position on the issue. A number of organizations protested against the British government, citing it as evidence of racism in Britain. Lord Salisbury, the minister in charge at the time, was called upon to resign as a result of the decision, which was widely condemned in Britain. While this was going on, the Bamangwato refused to replace Khama when the British High Commissioner to Bechuanaland ordered them to do so and demanded the return of their Kozi. In addition to calling the Queen to request the return of their chief, they sent a delegation of 6 Bamangwato elders to London to meet with Khama and Lord Salisbury. Seretse and Tshisekedi were required to sign agreements with Britain, promising to give up their chieftaincy and coexist peacefully. In 1956, Ruth and Khama were permitted to return to Botswana as private citizens after Khama yielded to the request. As for Tshisekedi, he remained and later died in London on June 10, 1959, but was buried in Seretse. If this video is interesting, do well to like and subscribe to the New Tourist channel. Turn on notifications too, so you get notified when we upload interesting videos like this. Let's continue. Seretse returns to Botswana. Seretse and Ruth returned to Botswana, this time with another child who was already 3 years old, Ian Khama. He was born on February 27, 1953. When the couple first returned to Seretse, Seretse led a quiet life and refrained from getting involved in politics. He led an ordinary life as a farmer and occasionally got involved in local politics. However, the 6 years spent in exile had cultivated a powerful political savvy that had no trouble slipping past his defenses. Beginning in 1957, Seretse actively took part in local and territorial government reform that resulted in the creation of a legislative council as important steps toward decolonization while still a private citizen. When he commented during a joint advisory council meeting in 1958 that was predominantly made up of chiefs and members of the white settler community, he revealed a visionary side to himself. Both of these groups were believed to have no interest in democratic reform and even believed that Botswana's future would be best served by joining the Rhodesia and Nyasaland federations, which at the time were predominated by white settlers. He said, "I believe it is time for us in Bechuanaland, who do not belong to the Union of South Africa, the Federation, or, as far as I can tell, any other part except Great Britain, to formulate a policy of our own, which is probably unique to us." He said this in response to a proposal to consider the Protectorate's affiliation with the Federation, and it was this position that laid the groundwork for Botswana to become what it is today. This was the same year that Ruth had two children, Chekidi Stanford and Anthony Khama, who were twins. He played the role of a back row volunteer for a while between 1957 and 1962, but it was clear that he was leading from the back. Unfortunately, he started to experience health problems around the same time. He was diagnosed with diabetes in 1960. He then entered politics. After losing and giving up his chieftainship, he became a nationalist hero and won the hearts of Botswana with his campaign for multiracial reform. When he entered politics, he was an immediate success. His political life. He established the Bechuanaland Democratic Party in 1962 with the primary objective of advocating for the reform necessary to create a non-racial independent republic, and the Bechuanaland Democratic Party received resounding public support for this. The first political elections in Bechuanaland were held in 1965, after the elders in the region pushed Britain for independence, which was granted in 1964. After the Bechuanaland Democratic Party won the initial elections, Seretse was appointed the country's first prime minister and led Bechuanaland to independence in 1966. He was elected as the country's first president after Bechuanaland was renamed Botswana following independence. With the new installation, Botswana had completed a full circle in terms of its transition from chieftainship to colonial rule, and now to political rule. This meant that the traditional chief's authority had to be limited in order for Botswana to become a democracy. Queen Elizabeth II named Khama, then known as Sir Seretse Khama, Knight Commander of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire, in the same year that he served as president. He later served as president for 4 terms in a row, and the country has held elections every 5 years since its independence in 1965. Livestock was the only notable commodity owned by the Botswana at the time of independence. Therefore, the beef industry was used to lay the foundation for Botswana's economy. A year after Botswana's independence, diamonds were discovered in the Kimberlite Pipe in Orapa, a remote region roughly 250 miles from the capital of Gaborone. This became the world's biggest mine, and 2 others were opened. Botswana became the largest producer of diamonds in the world by the 1980s. They did not misuse this opportunity given to them, they held strong to it. They managed it so well that they had the fastest growth rate in the world between the time of independence and the start of the next century. Seretse channeled these resources into services for the people and was developed throughout the country for the benefit of everyone. He invested in infrastructure, health, and education. Botswana was better off as an independent nation than when they were under the colonial rule. Many Botswana were happy with the fact that this discovery was made when they were no longer in the rule of their colonial masters, because this would have sparked several misunderstandings in their country. It was like a blessing to them. In the midst of racial tensions in the region, Seretse was known for upholding liberal democracy, high principles, and promoting non-racialism. Seretse Khama's last days. Khama was receiving treatment in London when he was told he had pancreatic cancer, which was terminal. After it was concluded that there was no chance of recovery, he went back home. On July 13, 1980, Seretse Khama passed away at the age of 59. When he died, the country was at a complete standstill. There was a political void because there had never been another political figure in Botswana. His memorial service was attended by 20,000 people, including many head of states. He was buried in the Royal Cemetery on a hill in Seretse, Central District, beside his father. Ruth turned her attention to charitable endeavors after his passing, rising to the position of president of the Botswana Red Cross. She continued doing so until her passing on May 22, 2002. She had equally distinguished herself in Botswana's service by standing by her husband's side throughout his challenges prior to entering politics and during her time as First Lady. When Ian Khama took office in 2008, he continued in his father's footsteps and became Botswana's fourth president. Seretse's intelligence, morality, and sense of humor are well remembered. Perpetual democracy, socioeconomic progress, political stability, and unification will be his lasting legacies. Above all, Seretse is credited with establishing democracy in Africa and Botswana. In Parliament in 1978, he stated that democracy, like a plant, does not grow or develop on its own. It must be nursed and nurtured if it is to grow and flourish. Botswana declared July 1st, a national holiday in honor of Seretse Khama. Sir Seretse Khama Day is observed on this day, which also happens to be his birthday. He is, however, only recognized as the country's first president. He took over an underdeveloped and little-known state from British rule and left it a democratic and steadily growing country. His legacy lives on. Thanks for staying with us until the end of the video. We hope you found this content interesting. Let us know what you think about this video in the comment section below. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe to the New Tourist channel and turn on notifications to receive updates when we upload more interesting videos like this. Thanks for watching.